and trails that make it easier and more accessible for us to get to nature. The next theme of the comprehensive plan, which is connecting to people, Complete Streets promotes infrastructure improvement that helps make it safely accessible to get between and within the Woodstock hamlets so people can connect to one another more easily. The comprehensive plan also was after creating a community for all. And Complete Streets, as it focuses on the needs of everybody, pedestrians, seniors, families, cyclists, businesses, and public transportation users, makes the town more accessible and even more enjoyable for everyone to live in. Now I'd like to give you some examples of what Complete Streets was recommended to deal with by the comprehensive plan. The first issue was pedestrians. And I don't think that there's anybody who doubts that it's often dangerous and at best difficult for pedestrians to get around in Woodstock. So Complete Streets is tasked with improving and expanding existing sidewalks, crosswalks, and pedestrian amenities within the Woodstock Commercial District and surrounding residential neighbors. It's our job to help you guys fix it. Another issue had to do with infrastructure. So Complete Streets is supposed to help align proposed Complete Streets project with the town's infrastructure and development. For example, any proposed water system extension could include widening roads for pedestrian and bike lanes. Okay, there are many infrastructure issues. That's just one of them. And I'll just be giving you examples of things that we're prepared to look at and to make recommendations to the town board about. Parking is another issue. I don't think I need to tell you that it's a problem, okay, that a lot of people want to be dealt with. Complete Streets is tasked with creating a long-range parking plan based on a thorough analysis of the town's current and projected parking issues and utilizing potential private property arrangements as well as town-owned properties. So Complete Streets will really be examining this issue thoroughly and trying to come up with our best solutions and our best ideas. Traffic. Well, anybody who's tried to turn from 375 into town knows the traffic can be a problem. And one issue that's been noted is that in order to get to the parking, you have to go through town. So it ends up creating large traffic jams in a small town. CS, the Complete Streets Committee, is hoping to help address this problem, beginning by conducting a traffic study of patterns, volumes, and cues to the Woodstock hamlet to identify possible alternative patterns. Now, the next item is not an issue, but it is also something that Complete Streets plans to deal with, which is to link bike and pedestrian paths and trails to regional and state linear paths and trails. We already have a lot of Woodstock residents using the Ashokan Rail Trail, and they have to get into their cars to do that. What we would like to do is to work on things to link it so that people can not have to get on their cars, but could use a bike, for example, to get from one path to another and to get from the village to the regional path. So that's another item for Complete Streets. That's just some of what the comp plan has designated to be addressed by Complete Streets. Now Ram's going to tell you how we are proceeding and what some of our plans are. Ram?
Thank you, Grace. You want to go to the next slide? Thanks. So our committee has, to help Woodstock achieve the goals of Complete Streets that Grace just laid out and that were laid out in the comprehensive plan, we've divided ourselves into 4 subcommittees. While we feel that these 4 Subcommittees encompass all of the goals that we've been tasked with. We understand that new goals or issues may arise, and therefore we may create additional subcommittees in the future. Our current subcommittees are an Accessibility, Parking, and Sidewalks Committee, a Paths and Trails Committee, Outreach and Communications, and finally a Policy Committee. Ahead, you'll see 2 slides for each subcommittee. And on the first slide, we'll talk about the mission of that subcommittee. On the second slide, we'll talk about what that subcommittee will do, its planned actions, and what it hopes to deliver eventually to the town board. Next slide, please. The comprehensive plan explicitly tasked us with looking at ways to improve parking in town. And we feel that the act of parking a vehicle is inextricably linked to where a person is going and what they're going to do after they park. Therefore, we feel that parking can't be improved without also improving where and how people move around outside their cars. The Accessibility, Parking, and Sidewalk Subcommittee will evaluate the existing conditions in the commercial district and make recommendations to improve accessibility, safety, and congestion. Next slide, please, Grace. As you can see on this slide, there's a parking inventory map. We're still in the process of completing this map, but eventually we hope to identify all the parking in town broken down by type, public and private, with handicap spaces as well. We plan to make a similar map showing sidewalk conditions, and that also includes crosswalks, curb cuts, and other relevant features. We'll be evaluating road painting and signage as well. After the mapping is complete, we will identify the best ways to make upgrades. We plan to create recommendations that we can present to the town board for improving parking and walking in town. Next slide, Grace. One back, please. There are a wide variety of paths and trails within our town and in the surrounding area. We have beautiful trails in town at the Comeau property. We have access to the extensive network of trails in the state park system. We have nearby trails like the Ashokan Rail Trail and the mountain bike trails in Bluestone Wild Forest. The goal of the Paths and Trails Subcommittee is to find ways to expand and improve the network of trails within the town and to find ways to connect our network to the networks around us. Next slide. The Paths and Trails Subcommittee will start by evaluating the town's existing network of trails and then determine how we can best make improvements and additions both on-road and off-road. We will identify the individual projects that will most improve our trail network and research ways of bringing those projects to fruition. We plan to bring potential projects to the town board with timetables, potential partnerships, and funding options. Some examples of the types of trails we're looking at are a trail connecting the hamlet of Woodstock to the hamlet of Bearsville, so that people don't have to walk on 212, and a trail connecting Woodstock to the Ashokan Rail Trail. Next slide, please. To achieve our Complete Streets goals, we'll need input and support from the town community. We created the Outreach and Communications Subcommittee to educate the community about our goals and gather input on Complete Streets improvements and implementation. Next, please. To engage the community, the Outreach and Communications Subcommittee plans to hold community meetings, both for education and for information gathering. We also plan to create a Complete Streets pamphlet for distribution and to use newspapers and social media to engage with the community. Next slide, please, Grace. Many jurisdictions around the country have Complete Streets laws to help advance the goals we've been talking about here tonight. New York State has a Complete Streets law. Ulster County and the city of Kingston have both passed Complete Streets resolutions. These policies work by encouraging new infrastructure and building projects to consider the effects of a given project on all forms of transportation, not just cars and trucks. The existing policies in each town vary greatly, and the mission of the policy subcommittee is to advise the town board on the best type of Complete Streets policy for our town. Next slide. The policy subcommittee plans to research existing Complete Streets policies from around the country and determine what works best for small towns like ours. We plan to solicit input from the town board, the highway department, and other municipal departments and committees. And finally, we plan to draft a complete streets policy to present to the town board for review, revision, and hopefully adoption. So thank you. That's our presentation for tonight. If anyone has any questions, we're available to answer them. Both Grace and I and other people from the committee who are on the call as well. So thanks a lot for your time and for your support.
Yes,
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Grace.
thanks. Any
Thanks.
questions? Any thoughts?
Why don't do me a favor though? Let's take this off screen so I can see everybody together. Thanks.
So I, of course, don't have any questions because as liaison, I've been to a lot of the meetings, but I want to give a great thank you to the Complete Streets Committee for all of the planning and investigations, and for now we have a path in a great direction, and the Complete Streets Committee is on that path. So I want to give my personal thank you to Grace and everybody on the Complete Streets Committee, and Kevin, the liaison, because he brings a lot as well.
There was a trail that went from town all the way up to Bearsville, and came up along the Sawkill, and it came out right up past the dog park and into the Como, or into the Rick Bolt field. But that was in the days when people weren't afraid that if somebody crossed their property, they were going to fall down and get hurt and sue them. So I think that's past. But that actually did exist at one time. You could ride your bike down it. It was such a nice trail because the riding club used it. And
Well, we're hoping to investigate those kinds of trails. And we'll get the information from you too, Laura, and hope to revive some of them. I mean, maybe people will be willing to, if it seems like something the whole community is doing, to allow people to move around more freely.
Oh, I think that would be great, but I'm not optimistic. You know, we used to, as kids, we just followed the deer trails. We never went on the road. And, but I don't see it happening again, but I'm hoping I'm wrong.
We can hope.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, we do. So
There is funding available for creating trails like these. And so, and there are examples of other towns that have created things like exactly what you're talking about, Lauren. And so our job is to research the feasibility. And if a trail like that is feasible, we'll bring it to the town board with a plan for how to go about trying to make it happen. If it's something we find isn't going to work, then we'll move on to a different one.
There
Yeah,
was,
having that
we
trail back was
spoke to someone who was on a thing called the Bay State Trails, and they have managed, despite all of the obstacles, to connect 40 towns in a circle around Boston. And they have a lot of tactics and techniques and strategies for making that happen. So that's part of what we'll be looking at, you know.
You know, historically, Lauren's right. There's a few trails that have been through Woodstock that have been lost over the years, even down through Xena and the Sawkill,
Yep.
which is, I imagine, how you would get at least to 28 somehow before people get hit by cars. But that's another story. So, you know, I'd be glad to look at some of those old maps with you or do something like that because they did exist until, as Lauren says, private property kind of took dominance, and people are, you know, just didn't want people trespassing anymore. So, yeah, you probably you got a long haul ahead, but you're on the right track, and I thank you all.
Well, that's great, because now we have with you and Lauren 2 more resources that we didn't have before.
They don't
No,
call
no,
them geese. They don't call them geezers for nothing.
yeah,
One and a half resource. That's all.
yeah. I've never been called a resource before. I don't know how to feel about
Well,
that.
all right, there's always a first time, Lauren.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
Bill.
Grace. Oh, I just wanted to ask, Grace, I sent you in the chat my email because I have a question for you. If you can look that up, we can chat later.
Okay.
Offline. Thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, just to respond to Lauren, because we're acutely aware of so many of these social trails, as we call them, or legacy trails that existed for decades, generations. And that increasingly, as the town, as properties have changed hands and been split up and developed, how many of them have been lost as new owners have come into them that don't feel the same way about people crossing their properties. But I would point to a couple of, the Overlook Trail is there on state land. That's an old trail. Over at Bluestone Wild Forest, through a lot of hard work over many, many years, decades now, there's 28 miles of multi-use trails that connect all the way from the town of Kingston, just literally almost at the town of Kingston offices down on Sauk Hill Road. You can enter the Bluestone Wild Forest there, up the old quarry roads, up the Wintergreen Road, and follow trails that many of them follow the old quarry roads, and go all the way over across Maury Hill Road, all the way over to Onteor Lake. So that we do have some successes that we can point to, albeit on state land. But I think it would be great to work with you and work with Lauren to help identify some of these that might still be opportunities to legitimize and make them, really important pathways for people to travel on.
Actually, you're reimagining some of the old trails the Native Americans took up from the soap from Kingston up to Overlook. So that's basically where you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also a nice trail off Lewis Hollow that goes out onto state land. But you cross the creek, so when the creek's high, that's kind of,
You can't get across.
you can't really get across it. But also a cool trail would be further up on California Quarry Road. If you could get an easement across somebody's property, you can hike in there pretty level to the old coal mine, which is not nearly as impressive as we were told it was as a child.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
It's not that much, but it's town history, and it's a nice walk along the ledges in there. So
yeah, the view is, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
Great.
Just quickly, thank
Can
you
I
for all
I'm
of your
sorry.
work and the presentation, and looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
Yeah. as
Have
am
you,
I.
can I just ask a quick question? Because I see Kevin sitting in front of the older bridge. Have you thought about the bridges in town, like the Tannery Brook Bridge, and how we deal with all that eventually? I know it's, you're just starting out, but I'm just wondering.
No, I think I can safely speak for us that we haven't, except to the degree to recognize that there are constraints,
Yeah.
that there are major constraints to having road projects that really would provide the kind of width for all different types of users of the type that Grace and Ram were describing in the presentation. And those are some of the challenges, and those are important to identify for creative ways to deal with them, and for identifying them as the kind of pinch points that they are, and impediments to creating safer roadways and streetscapes for everyone. And Tannery Brook, I would just offer that Tannery Brook is, I think, one of the most important roadways in town, as an illustration of a very small road that accommodates a wide variety of users, including lots of pedestrians, lots of people with riding on bicycles or needing to use mobility devices. And I think it's a really interesting opportunity and challenge for the community to kind of look at that as a kind of example of where complete streets principles might really be important to do something that could provide a great example for the community moving forward. Thanks.
Yeah,
Well,
and
there
can I
were
just
plans
add
at
to
one
what-
time, back about 4 years ago, Lauren, of building a pedestrian bridge across that, the one by the library, by Como Drive.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah, but
Well,
They might-
we're hoping to look at all of those things again,
to
old is
add to
new
what-
again, huh?
to add to what Kevin said, I think part of the idea behind a policy for the town, which is where one of the main directions that we're going with our committee, is that it it would encourage any new construction that happens or any work that happens on the road to take into account all of these ideas. So if there's ever work on Tannery Brook Road, because it's a county road right now and our highway department doesn't have control over what happens there. So if we have a policy in town that lays out what any new projects that happen within town have to consider, then we can not, assure that this happens, but at least try to push it in the right direction or have more of a voice at the table for when those projects do come up.
Okay.
Also, in addition, I think that part of the function of the Complete Streets Committee might be advocacy with the DOT. So that we're not just talking about town projects, we're talking about projects in town.
Alex, you've had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, am I allowed?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Grace and Rum, you guys probably don't know me, but I'm the chair of the Environmental Commission. So it's nice to meet you guys, Alex.
Nice to meet you too.
Hi. And I was just thinking, at a time when we're talking so much in town about zoning and planning and, development, it might make sense for you guys to reach out to some of the boards who handle housing, things like that, because part of the idea of how we use our streets has to do with where we're going when we get there and how we can kind of streamline services and housing, what kind of businesses would be in town and how we can get to them more easily. And that would probably have more to do with zoning, with the housing committee, things like that. But if you're trying to get pockets where people can go from one place to another and really access all of the things that they need, having the minimal environmental impacts and having the minimal, driving, things like that, parking use, it might make sense to in some way collaborate with some of these other departments at once and think about that all together while it's such a big topic.
Well, we are very fortunate to have on our committee a representative from the planning board, Judy Kerman, and a representative from the housing committee, Kirk Ritchie. So that we do have input for those things, but we don't have anybody from the environmental commission.
Well, I am liaison. I'm not on the environmental commission, but I am liaison to that. So certainly, Grace, if there's anything at Complete Streets you want me to bring back to environmental commission, I'm more than happy to do that. And I am chair of the zoning revision committee. So actually, Complete Streets has a wide variety of people on it.
It just seems sometimes here like there's so many places you have to go to access the things that you need that goes beyond, what the sidewalk is like. And I think you guys are probably the right people to be thinking about that while you're doing this.
One thing that's really important regarding, because you represent the Environmental Commission, and you guys have done such great work, including to help address, issues of related to climate change. And the reality is, in terms of transportation and the greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector, is that we could electrify every car in the country and we would still not be meeting the requirements to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. So in a town like Woodstock, where we still have an intact hamlet and an intact community with population density, every opportunity we have to get people out of private cars and get them out walking and riding bicycles and moving about safely and enjoyably, that's a big opportunity for the community to address multiple problems at once. Our population will be healthier, they'll be happier, they'll be producing less greenhouse gas emissions, we'll have less congestion, air pollution, we'll alleviate some of our parking issues, which are quite significant. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there to kind of do multi-solver type solutions to things if we work together.
Okay. Thank you all. I appreciate the presentation and look forward to seeing further product and working with you guys to achieve this. And with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our next presentation. We have Melinda and Brent from the Cornell Cooperative presentation for our resiliency tool. So Melinda, Brent, floor is
Hi,
yours.
everyone. So I'm Melinda Herzog. I'm the Healthy Communities Program Leader at Cornell Cooperative Extension, and I'll let Brent introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brent Goach. I'm a colleague of Melinda's. I'm a resource educator with Cooperative Extension of Ulster County. I'm also with the Ashokan Watershed Stream Management Program.
So we have been working on and completed a climate smart resiliency planning tool with the town and in cooperation with your Climate Smart Task Force. And we just want to share with you this evening the recommendations that we are going to be making and have shared with the municipalities. So Brent has a PowerPoint to share. I don't know if he's got sharing privileges.
I think I do. Hopefully everybody can
Okay.
see it.
Yep.
All right.
Beginning. There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks. So you can advance.
Mhm.
So basically, again, this is a climate smart resiliency and planning project. It's worth points in the Climate Smart Communities program. And I just want to tell you very quickly a little bit about Cornell Cooperative Extension. We are basically associated with the land grant university in New York State, which in our state is Cornell. The federal government long ago established cooperative extensions all across the country, and they are all associated with a land grant university in their state. And in our state, as I shared, it's Cornell University, and we have cooperative extensions representing every county in the state. So you can go ahead and advance. The whole point of this is to bring research-based information to the community and put that knowledge to work. So in our projects and our programs, we have combined forces with other counties in the region and formed a climate resilience partnership that is made up of several cooperative extensions. And we're working on many projects together. So our associations include Columbia Green, Dutchess, Rensselaer, Rockland, and Ulster County. This partnership is funded by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program and the New York State Water Resources Institute at Cornell University, with support from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund. So our projects have included a combination of research, demonstration, and educational outreach to address the challenges of flooding, stream and watershed management, and climate change. You can go ahead and advance. Next slide.
Might be a lag. Can you see it?
Okay. By the end of 2021, we will have worked with a total of 45 communities as a partnership, multi-county partnership, to complete 65 adaptation actions, 19 climate smart community certification assessments, and provided submission assistance to 9 communities. We also anticipate to have helped a total of 17 communities, if not more in some way, achieve climate smart certification by the end of 2021. Next slide. So this year, all of our work through the Watershed Resiliency Partnership will focus on providing community support on climate smart community certification actions. And in 2021, Ulster County is assisting the village of Ellenville, the towns of Gardner, Hurley, Rosendale, and Woodstock with these climate smart resiliency and planning tools. And 2 additional towns, Esopus and Lloyd, will receive similar assistance through funding with the Nature Conservancy. We're also working with the town of Wawarsing to review all of the work that they have done that would qualify them for credit in the Climate Smart Communities program. And with funding from the New World Foundation, we're assisting 2 additional communities, the town of Hurley and the town of Rochester, also on climate smart community certification. In the past couple of years, Ulster County has provided assistance on other climate smart communities actions, including assistance in incorporating sustainability elements in comprehensive planning, developing flood preparedness guides, and supporting Cornell students in designing climate smart resilient waterfronts for communities. Next slide. So the benefits of becoming a climate smart community. Besides the general framework or roadmap that climate smart community certification provides communities, there are many other benefits to becoming a climate smart community, which of course Woodstock is. Participating communities can receive free technical assistance when working to address any of the 130 actions outlined by the program. In addition to direct technical assistance, you can receive guidance through resources like monthly webinars organized by the DEC's Office of Climate Change. And you can also receive statewide recognition and score higher on competitive grants. Next slide. So on to the project that we're actually working on. This is Climate Smart Resiliency and Planning. And what we did with this is we used a tool to assess resiliency and planning. We reviewed existing plans, policies, and practices to identify climate adaptation strategies that that may decrease vulnerability. And the process was introduced to the town through the CAC Climate Smart Task Force, the ECC, I should say. And from there, we did a desk review of all the existing planning documents and policies to answer the questions in the tool, and then met with municipal officials. We met with the supervisor, we met with highway, building and codes to answer remaining questions that had to do with the town's, how much training that they provide and what kinds of training and different practices that are just individualized to the town of Woodstock. So from there, we completed the tool and developed recommendations, and that's what we're here to share tonight. Brent has done the brunt of this work in going through the tool, and he's going to go through and share with you the report he put together, just a summary of it, and the report has been shared with the municipality. So you want the next slide? It's just a quick slide that shows you all the people that we typically meet with in going through this process of climate resiliency and planning. And I just shared who we did meet with, so you can move on to the next slide. So the tool itself, like I said, is a checklist that helps identify strengths and gaps in resiliency and planning. And the whole point of this is that as you move forward in going through future planning documents, you'll have this tool to refer to that identifies planning and adaptation opportunities to improve resilience. So I just wanted to also share that, again, this is worth points in the Climate Smart Communities program. They can be applied for, so it's worth 6 points. Next. So these are the 6 planning areas that are key for climate resilience and planning. The first page of the tool is the checklist of documents that looks at all of the planning documents that the municipality has completed. But then there's risk and vulnerability assessments, public outreach and engagement, especially as it relates to disaster planning, and planning integration, disaster preparedness and recovery, and hazard mitigation implementation. I'm going to turn it over to Brent, who's going to share our recommendations.
Great, thank you, Melinda. Sorry, some of my boxes over here. Very good. Yeah, so as Melinda mentioned, there's a lot of things we discovered when we were working with the town of Woodstock, not only going through their documents, but also talking with their municipal officials. And we discovered that the town has tremendous strengths. And by the way, everything that we're going to be going through the next several slides are just the highlights. There's many more in our recommendations documents that we just, don't have the space to, don't have the time to share tonight. So in regards to some of the strengths that the town has, we've completed very recently, just this year, a natural resources inventory that catalogs, natural resources in the town, geology, aquifers, wetlands, habitats, many other areas. That has a great base for you to, start planning from. You have a very comprehensive wetlands and watercourses law that provides an additional level of protection that, so for those riparian areas, they may not have otherwise been protected. This law protects them. You also have some stream management documents. You have a Sawkill corridor assessment, and my program, AWSMP, completed a Beaver Kill stream management plan several years ago. So you have, some pretty comprehensive documents to work from. And also just from my work with AWSMP and my work from here with the town on the Climate Smart program, it's just become clear that you have a very enthusiastic and active Environmental Conservation Commission, as well as the Climate Smart Communities Committee. You meet regularly, and a lot of the actions have already been taken. So you have a lot of really great foundation to build from. So I'm moving back over here. So in addition to, kind of in converse to that, you have some opportunities also available to you. We recommended that you participate in the Nature Conservancy Community Resilience Building Workshop, which Melinda mentioned earlier. It's similar to what we did with the town here, but on a much more in-depth scale, and it really pinpoints locations to target, businesses to work with. It's just a more comprehensive type of assessment. It's difficult now, I know, because of the pandemic. Most of these meetings that we've had of them have been in person as opposed to online, but by the time you're getting ready to do this next year, hopefully that'll all be behind us, and so you can have some in-person meetings to do that workshop. And I believe there's also opportunities to do it online too. We recommend it. So first of all, let me say there's a lot of training that has been done in town, the Building and Codes Department and the Highway Department. But there's other opportunities as well that you can take advantage of. Many of them are for free or very reduced cost, particularly as it relates to floodplain and emergency management issues. As Melinda mentioned earlier, you can leverage this report that we made for you to get points in the Climate Smart Communities program. And in addition to that, you're active, or you're not active, but you adopted the Ulster County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. I know it's a mouthful, but that makes you available for several different FEMA grants. Flood mitigation assistance, hazard mitigation grants, as well as, this is a relatively new one, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities BRIC program, which I should say, has the opportunity to perhaps even leverage some of the work you're doing with Complete Streets, because a lot of that stuff is tied together, and you're looking for things like that. So now we're going to get into the recommendations of those 6 broad categories that we had mentioned a few slides back. This is under the vulnerability and risk assessment category. And again, these are just the highlights. There are many more in the recommendations document. So we recommend that you conduct a full vulnerability assessment for the town. You do this by using a Department of State tool. That's a little bit different than what we had here. But by doing this action, you can get additional points in the Climate Smart program. As we mentioned before, seeking out training opportunities from municipal officials on vulnerability and risk assessments. A lot of FEMA trainings, a lot of FEMA software that can help manage things a little bit better. We recommend, this is something that other communities have done, and it's really, I think, worked out pretty well, by creating maps of populations, particularly vulnerable populations, also building stock, natural and cultural resources, and overlaying that with risk areas. Now, they usually refer to as flooding, but that could be other things as well. And by having those that visualization, with a base map with the overlay, you can really help your planning boards, your ZBAs, your building departments, all those planning agencies and groups, Environmental Conservation Commission, see where the target areas for protection and maybe to limit development or move it to more appropriate areas. And it's kind of similar to go along with that. A lot of communities have done a build-out analysis, and Woodstock has done that, but they haven't done that in like a visual format. So looking at that from like a more visual way could, again, incorporating that with the bullet above could really, help with planning purposes. Oops. Uh-oh. I'm really hoping I didn't freeze. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. So the next category here is public outreach and engagement. And there's, again, several different things you could do, but the 2 that came to the forefront was, and by the way, you're doing a lot of this already, but working with, holding a climate change education event in the town functions. It's an Earth Day celebration, or, Woodstock has no shortage of fairs, festivals, and, activities going on with it. Particularly when the pandemic's over, I'm sure a lot of that's going to heat up again. And having a booth there at these festivals and letting people know what the town is doing to be proactive about climate change. Again, very relatively simple things can net you points in the system. We also recommend creating a website, or I should say either a web page on the existing town website or a new website altogether, talking about the actions you've taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And there have been several already that you've uploaded to the Climate Smart site. I just want to add that these efforts here were highlighted by the municipal officials that we work with as priority actions. So the next category is integration of municipal plans. I think your comprehensive plan is relatively recent, but when you go to update it again in a few years or whenever that is, really think about putting sustainability elements within it. And there's a whole list of those that you can incorporate. And that, besides making the community more resilient, again, it nets you significant points in the system. I always mention this, there's a lot of opportunities to do local waterfront revitalization. A lot of people always say, oh, that's just for Hudson River communities. No, it's not. It's actually for quite a few inland waterways, Sawkill being one of them. And, for you, maybe you're not gonna have a giant, dock or something like that, but you could have kayak and boat put in some, there's opportunities there. And, this is funding you can get from the Department of State to do. It wouldn't be any cost to you. We recommend creating what's known as a green economic development plan. And that's really looking at not only the businesses in the town and economic development, but also the infrastructure, because the two of them are really linked quite well. And just think about, if a bridge gets washed out, is that going to impact local businesses? And, how do we, kind of solve that problem by, upsizing a bridge, upsizing a culvert, making sure it's passable during a storm, so that, after a disaster, a hurricane, flood, et cetera, you can get back on your feet and, the economy can keep moving. Another one I thought that could really benefit the town of Woodstock. You have very, very many great restaurants there. And this is a bit of a challenging action to take. I think this is something, if you could pull off, it'd be really great, which is an organics management plan, which is a way to capture organic, waste scraps, basically do composting and, kind of that sort of thing. But again, it's working with a lot of the local establishments to capture that, get it out of the waste stream and turn into like the compost and things like that. Again, a bit of a challenging one, but I think it's something that if you could pull off, it'd be really great, and you're really up to the challenge on that. So disaster preparedness and recovery, we recommend creating an evacuation plan. Now, I know informally, a lot of the officials, particularly highway department folks, know, where the problem areas are, and they know who to talk to prior to a flood or a disaster to get people out. But formalize that, have it on the shelf so that, as people turn over, people retire, people come and go, people are aware, so you don't lose that institutional knowledge. And also maybe think about some, things that you might not have thought about before, certain areas. Climate change is certainly going to be creating more heat emergency days, these longer, more intense heat waves. So having an actual heat emergency plan in place where you designate cooling locations, places for vulnerable populations to go, how to outreach to those vulnerable populations and get them into the shelter that they need, creating a plan for that. And also I recommend participating in the National Flood Insurance Program's Community Rating System. This is a program within a program. It's actually a little bit similar to the Climate Smart program that the state runs, but this is on the federal level, where essentially you have a bunch of actions, and the more actions you take, the more points you get. The more points you get, the greater reduction of flood insurance premiums town-wide. This is a bit of a challenge. It's a bit of a lift. It's usually a pretty big burden on your building department. But having said that, the town of Shandaken, so right next door to you, was recently accepted into this program, and they're going to be implementing it. So you have neighbors right next door that you can interface with and learn from them to help get into that program if you're interested in doing that. And I just would add that flood insurance premiums are going up as time goes on. So this is probably going to be a concern for a lot of members of your community. And then finally, under the hazard mitigation implementation section, we recommend that you support acquisition programs to purchase conservation easements in flood-prone areas, particularly these riparian areas that can be environmentally sensitive. They're a place for floodwaters to go. So in many ways, it's a win-win situation. You acquire the land, you keep it out of development. So if there is a large, rainstorm or hurricane that comes through, it gives the floodwaters a place to go. If it's open space, it's not harming infrastructure or homes or businesses. Kind of related to that, adopt what's called a design flood elevation, which is a more strict standard for new and substantially improved construction in the town. Again, this is to help attenuate flooding. Right now, minimum New York State standards is 2 feet above base flood elevation, so basically 2 feet above the expected waters of the 100-year flood. Again, something to consider, maybe going 2.5, 3 feet if appropriate. Again, it's up to the community to decide whether that's appropriate for them or not. And then finally, you don't have to do this all out of pocket. You can certainly access money for certain of these actions through the Climate Smart program, but also accessing federal grants, as I mentioned earlier. So that about wraps it up for us. I just want to say thank you to everybody for listening to us and for all those who assisted us with completing this tool. And I think Melinda and myself would be happy to entertain any questions that the board or anyone else has. And I will stop sharing right now.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, we want to thank everybody, on the, that came and met with us from the municipality and the Environmental Conservation Committee that assisted with this. Everybody was wonderful. It was really great to work here. And I just want to reiterate what Brent said. We're also really do support complete streets. We're happy to see that. And that is worth points in the Climate Smart Communities program and in your comprehensive plan. So it's a pleasure to be here tonight. And can we answer any questions?
I just want to start off by saying thank you very much to both of you and the WEC. Alex, everybody's done a great job. I know that Heather and Boney put in time.
Just wait.
Who's telling me to wait?
Sorry. That was not meant.
Okay. as well as the building inspector. So with that, I'll open it up. Does the board have any questions?
Well, I just wanted some clarification of all the action items of which they look excellent. I guess my thought is our WEC would probably proceed with those. Or are there anything on your list where the town board itself needs to take the lead? Or because our WEC does a wonderful job. And so my thought would be the WEC would probably be the first line of attack on those. I just didn't know if there's anything on that list that the town board itself needs to take the lead on.
That's a
I'm
good
not sure, Melinda.
question.
You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think anything that requires a resolution would probably have to go to the town board. And I don't think anything I necessarily had on there requires a resolution, at least not immediately. But yeah, you could certainly delegate that to, the Climate Smart Committee or the ECC, sure.
Yeah, well, we certainly want to be supportive. And I'm the liaison to the WEC, so I'm 100% supportive of the WEC, and I continue to be impressed with that group because they're very proactive, very passionate, very dedicated, and do a lot of great work and a lot of great investigations, et cetera, and producing things and bringing us to a higher and higher level with our climate smartness. But anyway, I just wanted, but yes, so we'll certainly support the WEC in all cases, but it's okay for them to take the lead. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of it, you're going to be, even right down to the outreach, you would be cooperating, obviously, with, the municipality and the board when you're changing things on the website and adding stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure it's a partnership.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Erin has her hand up, I think.
Yeah. Hi, thanks. Sorry, my video's not working. I just wanted to actually, on behalf of the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, I wanted to say thank you to Melinda and Brent so much for doing this this project. It's really, it's been very useful. I actually got a chance to go over the presentation before the call tonight, and I know it's going to help us make some factually based decisions with planning going forward. We plan on getting the points, so thank you very much for that. And also a few items on there with collaborating with the highway department of that, expanding public outreach and engagement. I just wanted to kind of put a plug in for Climate Smart Communities. Our task force is going to be meeting the first Monday of the month, which is May 3rd is our next meeting. We do plan on going over this resiliency tool in detail, looking at the recommendations that you guys made. Some of them we can already kind of hit the ground running. And again, I just wanted to say thanks a lot for doing such a great job. But anybody who wants to get more involved, please feel free to join the Climate Smart Communities Task Force meeting. You can reach out to the board and get the information. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erin. Anybody else have questions? Richard?
I got just a quick technical question. In your recommendations, you mentioned training and vulnerability tools.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
So that's actually a very long list, and I didn't include everything on there.
Just
I think the example I use, I'm sorry, what was that?
Whatever examples you can give us.
Yeah, so I think the one example I give was FEMA's HAZUS MH software. That's a software that probably the building department would use to catalog damages after a natural disaster, flood, tornado, et cetera, things like that. But there's other things working with flood insurance rate maps, which, by the way, your building department knows how to work with that. They wouldn't need those types of trainings, but more in-depth trainings on how to calculate substantial damage, substantial improvements, elevation, flood proofing, things like that. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Well,
Going
again,
once? Twice. Alex, you were just clapping? Okay. Well, Brent, Melinda, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. We look forward to implementing a lot of these, the points you brought up, and also using the tool to help make a safer Woodstock. So
thank you again. Thanks for allowing us to present at your meeting this evening. It was good to see all of you.
My pleasure.
All right.
So, okay. So with that, I'm going to move on. I've got two topics that I just wanted to briefly talk about. Andy Lee Field and Rick Volt's playground equipment. So probably last year at some point it came up about the condition of the playground equipment. Actually, it probably came up even longer than that. But I did ask a group of town employees, mothers, the three town clerks, Jackie, Lynn, and Michelle, as well as Pam, Ashley, and Heather, to go out and do some research and take a look at this. And they've all done a great job. They met with the supplier who provided a lot of the equipment the last time around, and are going to be making a presentation next week on recommendations for getting rid of, and I know our insurance carrier it almost fell over when he heard this. He was very excited to hear it, but make recommendations for getting rid of some of the older, more dangerous equipment, and putting appropriate wood mulch barrier in there and whatnot. And this is all going to cost a good chunk of money, but I want to point out that we have in our recreation fund, which is designed solely for use in parks and playground equipment and whatnot. I think we have the money to cover that. So I just wanted to give the board a heads up, and the public, that next week they will be making a little short presentation with recommendations. So I look forward to that. The other thing is, I didn't get a chance to forward it to you, but I got an email this evening or earlier today from Vince at the hardware store, making a request that we consider at the bottom of the hill here on Como Drive, at least some of those parking spaces, make them short-term 20-minute parking spots. Because I think what happens is we get a lot of folks who are parking there long-term for the day, or there's equipment parked there and whatnot. And since that is so close to the police station, the hardware store, and the pharmacy, and in front of the pharmacy, I'll point out we do have 20-minute parking right now. I think it would be beneficial to have that as temporary short-term parking. So think about that. I will send you his email. Neil Smaller at the apothecary did reach out to me as well and indicate that he was in agreement that this would be beneficial to that whole area there. So take a look at it the next time you're down through, and we'll make a decision maybe the next meeting or early in May.
Yeah, I have a quick question on that. So, can you, what would short term be? 20 minutes, half an hour, an hour? What would short term be defined as?
I got what we have, but we'll discuss that. I will say that in front of the apothecary, it's 20 minutes.
Right.
Or at least I believe it's 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably makes sense to keep it the same. I think it might get a little confusing if one's 20 minutes and one's 30 minutes. But I don't have a strong opinion one way or another.
Okay, and then the other thing is, I mean, I don't know if we're going to put a sign up that says short-term 20 minutes, but it might be also nice to say during the day, maybe it's the 20 minutes, but I mean, after hours, like if somebody's at night court, they might want to be parked there. So I might think that we might want to have it short-term during the day, but allow long-term after hours.
Certainly.
They can park right across the street in the town parking lot. If
right
they
up the
go to night
road.
court.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be, I spoke with Vince about this, and it should be 30 minutes or less for sure. And if you're going to night court, park across the street in the parking lot. I mean,
But the bottom of Cuomo is across the street from the town hall.
Do you mean up the road in the town parking lot, Lauren?
Yeah.
Yeah, the lower.
It's what? It's another 100 yards?
Yeah.
It's and honestly, if one more sign on the Como Drive would be about enough. We don't need like a whole paragraph telling people what they can do and what they can't do. Just make it 30 minutes and 20 minutes, whatever you decide. But if they got to stay longer, they go across the street.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be. I think it's a great idea, as long as it gets enforced. That's the only.
I'll ask Neil and Vince because right now it's the 20-minute in front of the store. I'll ask them how they feel that's working out, and we can use that as a gauge.
Okay. Well, my hope continues to be that it be a daytime thing, not an evening thing. I know Lauren and I disagree on that, but anyway,
Okay.
I still think it should be a daytime thing.
Okay. All right, so everybody ponder that, and if we feel we want to do a resolution next week, let me know. If we feel we need more time, we can do it sometime in May. So with that, I'm going to scoot over to a couple of resolutions. Be it resolved to hire Melissa Lavaggio as parking lot attendant for the Rock City Municipal Parking Lot at an hourly rate of $16.73 beginning May 1st, 2021 through October 24th, 2021, full-time seasonal.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Be it resolved to hire Gabriella Lima as part-time dispatcher at a rate of $21.87 effective April 13th, 2021.
Second.
So just for clarification, when we hired Gabriella as a police officer, we also hired her as dispatch. She resigned from that position. She, at that time, didn't have a lot of time to put in hours. But I guess she's had some job changes and feels she could put more time in and is interested in spending more time in Woodstock. So that's why we're moving to rehire her. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Bill, can I ask who seconded that?
Lauren.
Lauren, thank you.
Whereas Pick a Nick Baskets LLC, 297 Tinker Street, Woodstock, New York, 12498 is in compliance with the Alcohol Beverage Control Law, Section 64, Subdivision 2A, has notified the municipality of their intent to file application for a liquor license with the New York State Liquor Authority. Whereas the property is currently in compliance with all local laws, does not have any violations at this time, therefore be it resolved to waive in this instance the 30-day period of review, said application, and consent to the issuing of a liquor license in the above named applicant.
Second. For purpose of discussion.
Go right ahead, discuss.
Where is this exactly?
Is this the old Peterson house, the backside?
Up the Bearsville,
Bearsville.
the complex.
Oh, the Peterson. Okay, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the more alcohol in Bearsville, the better.
I knew I'd get your vote, Lauren.
You don't have to walk as far.
And he can walk home.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, he
almost.
has to go uphill though, so I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, that's getting tougher every day.
Did I have a second on that? Richard, did you
Yes.
second that?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do we have any public be heard, Ashley?
Nobody posted in the chat.
I
Okay,
got a couple questions, Bill.
sure.
Where are we on the potential for discussing a moratorium?
I
I sent an
totally
email out
forgot that.
earlier.
I'm glad you brought that up. So
Oh,
I have, oh, somebody asking another question?
No, I said, so am I. I'm glad I brought it up.
Okay. So I have talked with 3 attorneys. I would rather not say in public who they are because part of the issue with trying to get an attorney is that neighbors and people interested in buying, so many folks have engaged or reached out to different attorneys that they all had to wait and see if there was going to be a conflict of interest on who they might represent. But I have talked to 3 attorneys. One has sent a proposal. The other 2, I'm hoping to have a proposal in the next day or so. So I believe that I would be able to put at least 2, if not 3 proposals in front of you so that we could hire an attorney for next week. So that's where we're at. I have that, the draft local law, which would be, one of them looked at it and said, okay, this is a good start and this is very helpful. So it's looking very promising.
Okay, so next week. All right.
We should be able to vote on one next week. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I had a question for board members. So I know back at our first meeting last month, I had sent out the 2 laws from the zoning revision committee, the one on telecommunications and the one on the clean water. And I had asked for feedback by the 9th, which would have been Friday. I don't think I saw any. I didn't know if anybody has feedback because hoping to move those 2 laws along in the process. Step 1 is given to the board, and then step 2 passes it to like planning board, attorney, county, et cetera, et cetera. So I just didn't know if anybody had any feedback on the 2 laws that I passed.
I don't believe I got them.
Well, I passed them on the date of our first meeting last month.
it was a while ago, yeah.
Correct. Well, because I was going to have the first review due in 2 weeks, but then we had to do the document, the police reform that was Reggie's document that took priority. So I said, well, okay, instead of asking for my feedback in 2 weeks, I'll wait 4 weeks. So I would have sent it on March 9th. I can resend if you'd like.
You could resend them to me
You
because I
please,
don't.
I'm sorry, Laura, because I would know for me, my mind was.
Yeah, I got them. I remember reading them, but it's a month ago now.
Yeah. Okay.
So much has happened in a month. If we could discuss this next week too, would be great.
I would love that. So I'll resend them, and maybe you could, if you could email with feedback if you would, but I'd love to have it on the agenda that we can move it on to the next step next week. That would be wonderful. I will resend.
Thank you.
Can I ask Councilman Earls a quick question? Because I got emails on the Como situation.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we going to deal with that? Did they send a letter or?
So I did write Jeff asking him to resend the letter because I don't think the board
I didn't get anything.
right. And so I haven't heard back from him, but I did talk to him about coming to next week's meeting to talk about the leash law and the fine, and to also talk about signage. So didn't hear back from him.
Jeff has arrived.
Is Jeff there?
Jeff's here.
Yeah, Jeff is here.
Okay. Hi, Jeff. You can unmute if you.
You can unmask too.
Now here I go.
I don't see him.
There I go. We left it last week that we didn't have the final wordage for the signs, and that was to go to the entire group before we present it to you folks. I'll work on that tonight or tomorrow morning. But I wanted to have a final wordage that the committee said was cool to go with.
Okay.
And we just didn't get there. It was
Okay.
sort of a
Aside from
scramble
that,
last
though,
week.
I think I wrote yesterday asking about the letter. So if you could please send that to all of us, that would be great.
I will do that. I'll do it tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Jeff.
you've asked for to go to the whole board, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So Jeff, do you think you might be ready to take 5 minutes next week and give us a quick presentation?
Sure, I'll make sure that happens.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
7 o'clock, yes.
Okay.
I just need
I'll
to
be
get
ready.
back to I need to get back to the person who sent the original letters and stuff like that. So that would be helpful. Thank you.
So why don't you let them know that we're planning to discuss it next week, Rick?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
No problem, guys. Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
And on another topic, Reggie and I did spend a little time yesterday talking about what we were going to do with Big Deep. So maybe Reggie, you and I could flesh that out a little bit more, and at our next meeting, start to have a conversation, or maybe even prior to that, send out an email to start.
Yes, I haven't had it. Yes, I totally will. I'll make sure the board gets that.
I've talked to Reggie a little bit about this, and I think his plan is working in the right direction. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you, Reggie.
Okay.
Okay. So real quick, getting back to the laws, look for 2 emails because there's 2 laws. There'll be 1 per email.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
2 emails, Laura. Come on.
Hopefully that keeps it easier.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
And Linda Lover wanted to talk for public be heard.
Okay. Linda, go ahead.
Oh, actually, you partially answered what I was wondering about, and that's because the weather is getting warmer, and I'm wondering what we're going to do about all our swimming holes, and maybe we should make some kind of rules and get them out there so people know what's going on before it gets really bad and can't stop anything. So
We'll tune in next week and maybe we'll have some ideas.
Great. That's terrific. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else, Ashley?
Nope.
Last chance for the board?
Well, I got an idea that was presented to me by someone a lot smarter than I am.
Wasn't one of the dogs, was it?
Well, both of the dogs are smarter than I am, but no, they don't get involved in politics.
Okay.
But and it involves like the rezoning of a building, but we have the Xena Elementary School down there that could be affordable housing. It's got a kitchen that could take care of Meals on Wheels or tables or anybody else that needs a kitchen. It's got a gymnasium. It's got everything that you could need. And we could make public satellite parking out of some of it and get a shuttle bus that runs from there up through town, and we could put satellite parking maybe up by the firehouse and eliminate some of our parking problems and our affordable housing problems. But it needs to be rezoned. And that's the way the idea was presented to me. And the more I think about it, the more I don't think it's completely stupid. So maybe it's something for us to think about.
Laura, you're the zoning revision committee. Do you want to take a look at that?
Yeah, we can take a look. I mean, we are looking at rezoning. We're looking at the term. Yeah, we're looking at floating zones. We're looking at I know we're calling it affordable housing, but community housing. So the happier term is a community housing. We're looking at where we can add more zones, where additional zones should be. What I will say, and let me just toss this out and get a quick reaction, but when we look into affordable housing and trying to get more housing that people in the town can afford, so that people that have been here for generations, people can still stay here, and the kids can buy a house, etc. We're thinking that we may need to increase the density of the town in terms of housing units, which is not the same as houses, but housing units. And the gut feel we're thinking of, and everybody can say this is terrible or yeah, okay, is perhaps a 10% increase. And that's not houses, that's housing units. It could be apartments or whatever. Maybe take a building, cut it into apartments. So we're thinking that for our housing, part of how we want to address the housing issue, to give a gut feel of what our vision is, the 10%, and I think we're looking at, maybe we have between 1,500 and 2,000 housing units in Woodstock now. And so maybe the answer is like 150 to 200 more. So we're using that. So as we do our zoning and our conversations, that's kind of a vision we're going with. And I'd love feedback from people. Is that a great idea or a terrible idea? But in any event, that's our current thought, because we're not going to get more housing unless we do increase the density. We didn't want to go crazy with the density, but we thought that 10% bit could be a smooth thing to do. So that being said, we are looking at the rezoning. We are looking at where we should be able to have accessory dwelling units. ADUs is the other thing. So the floating zone is the one thing. ADUs, accessory dwelling units, is the other thing that we're thinking about in terms of what do we do with accessory dwelling units, meaning that you can have on one property that used to have only one dwelling unit. Maybe there's maybe you have an apartment in your house, or maybe you have an extra building. So that's another thought. The Xena Elementary School in particular, that is an interesting thought. I did talk with, I don't see, oh, there is Kirk. So Kirk, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I do believe that Kirk had told me that the Housing Committee had talked to Repco, who does know a lot about making housing in different areas. And that they didn't think the Xena Elementary School, and I don't recall what the reason was, but they didn't really embrace that. I will also say I personally called Repco today because as we look at what are the possibilities of additional housing in town, I wanted to get an idea from Repco, my own idea of what do they think is good and what do they think is not so good. So I did get a call back from Repco, although the person that handles Ulster County was unavailable. So the person that talked to me didn't do Ulster County, but he took the information. So he's going to have somebody else call me. So there are a lot of ideas going around for housing. I think starting with what does our increased density look like? Our current thought again is a 10% increase of density. I will add this to the list of things to look at, but I do believe Kirk had told me the Housing Committee had looked at it. And I don't recall the reasons why. I do recall Kirk saying that it wasn't embraced by Repco, but I don't recall the reasons, but we can look at it again.
Okay, Laura, thank you. And with that, I will move to adjourn since that's where we were headed. Do I have a second?
That.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, Kevin. Ashley, don't. Did you send me your number? Kevin? Is he gone? I can get it. Okay.
Take care, Maria Elena.
Aye.
I want to take a picture of this
There's a
chat.
number in it. There's some number in the chat, Reggie. I don't know what that is.
What?
There's a number in the chat. I don't know what that is.
That's not me. I just wanted a picture. Okay, I got it. Thank you.